Day with one half of an incredible podcast that if you're not subscribed to, you're doing it all wrong. Living Split Screen, Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, that is with Pong Soul, who is lurking in the background while he's working. And of course, the other half, the one that calls it like it is, that doesn't pull punches and doesn't worry about hurting your feelings. Steel Brain, my brother, welcome.
Hey, Boom, man. You know, it's always an excellent time to sit down with you and chop it up about games, especially when things are so juicy within our industry right now.
It's gonna be a delicious steak.
Bro, I like my medium well personally, but it seems to be a little bit more pink in the middle, which is always a good time to get into. So we're about to find out, man. A lot of interesting conversation I have today. I want to thank you for inviting me back on, because always crazy things going on the back end, but anytime that I can jump on here, it's always a pleasure, man. I greatly appreciate you.
Well, it's great to have you here, brother. It's great to have everyone here. I got to talk about last night, because last night we did some things that we have never done before. Remember, now this channel, it's going to be 5 years old November 3rd. Is officially 5 years old from the first video to the near 1,000th. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to rolling into the 1,000th piece of content. 1,000 videos is something that does not happen very easily. You do have to be tenacious, and you do have to try and fail and win, and that's what I've done with this channel. And it is really something to talk about, because last night not only did we have one of the biggest panels in show history, where we had 9 people including myself, and the special guests included Hargeet Chani, King David, and of course Randall Thor. I mean, it was madness. But I think really what sets this show apart is yesterday, the final tally is we had 938 live viewers at any one given time. That's what it topped off at. That is the most in channel history. We were, and these weren't bots, folks. These were actually human beings.
That real people,
real people. Real people tuned in for this craziness, and we're going to get into it today. But before we actually get down to the Brazilian government approving the Xbox $78.7 billion deal, or nearly I'm sorry, 68.7, nearly $70 billion Activision Blizzard, we are going to do something that a lot of shows don't do, and we're going to get into the minutia of what they said. Now, this document is very lengthy. It is extremely meaty. I have to give a shout out for people like Hoglore, who is going to read all these documents, who's going to break everything down. A huge shout out to Benji Sales, who put this out there. Benji is a good friend of this program. He's a great friend of the community. He's constantly doing the gaming lord's work. Listen, folks, it is I gotta say, we, and I say we, people like Randall Thor and Dealer and Steel Rain and Mav and Pong and Boxenberger and everyone that you tune into, our gaming circle, our gaming family, have said a lot of the things that were in this Brazilian document. And we actually made fun of it to the point where it almost sounded, Steel, like it was written by someone that not only understands the business, but may have been listening to some of these podcasts to get an idea of what exactly is happening at front facing value, where we know that Jim Ryan has been flying around the country. He's been flying around outside of the country trying to get regulators to be on his side, when we know what he's putting down is not only he's lying, but he is painting a picture that is extremely false. And that false picture might have come back to bite him in the rear, so to speak, because when I read some of these excerpts from the document from the Brazilian government, or from C.A.D.E, which is the acronym is C.A.D.E, C-A.D.E, it does sound like they were a little ticked off that they were used by Sony, because obviously he went to them first to complain about this deal, saying that that PlayStation would be dead without it and they can't compete, and that there's no other game like Call of Duty. And it did seem like they were a bit aggravated because of it. And something, based on what we've seen so far, Steel, there's a lot of, the funniness about lion dance moves Jim Ryan. There's something to be said about that. I know we make fun of it, but at the end of the day, listen, I get it. I'm not a boob. It's business. He's got to get out there. He's got to
Right.
defend his stockholders, and he's got to put on a good show. But the truth of the matter is once I have read, Steele, some of these documents, and people get a whiff of exactly what the Brazilian government is saying, it's hard to imagine that the CMA or the FTC or the EU Commission are going to have anything different to say, because they do break it down in a very digestible and understandable way. But listen, before we get into that, got to welcome in nearly 200 people here. I have to start off by saying, first of all, if you are new to the channel, we welcome you here with open arms. We are closing in on 12,000. We are at 11,000, just short of 300. And I'm hoping that we can get to that 300 today. So if you are finding the channel for the first time and you're digging what I'm putting down, I have officially become a full-time streamer where I'm doing this 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, all different shows, all different panels, all different opinions. And if it's something that you're digging, please consider subscribing, hit the bell so you know when I go live. But I want to open up, Steele, with something that you and I are very excited about, and that is this month's Game Pass helpings. And quite frankly, just by the thumbnail you saw, if what is interesting about this month specifically is that there is no one ilk that it's favoring, meaning that there are games literally for everyone of every shape, size, and genre. You have Scorn, which is filling the horror Halloween-esque kind of feeling. It's an 8 to 10 hour experience. It's gross. It's very H.R. Geiger inspired. Right? Persona 5. Okay, now if you're a PlayStation guy or gal, that may be old news, but for Xbox people, we have been waiting for this for years. And if it's your bag, well, then guess what? That you have the JRPG that you have been asking for, right? It's there for you. And on top of that, what do we get? Well, we get a game that is multi-plat, but it is very Sony-esque, where it's the over-the-shoulder, story-driven, real-life graphics in Requiem, A Plague's Tale 2, and that's not it. But still, I gotta go to you first on this. We're gonna get into Call of Duty and what it means to Xbox Game Pass, and it does mean. Listen, you can say what you want about the Activision Blizzard King, and there's a lot of tentacles of where you can go with it. Where it's important to Microsoft, how it's important to Microsoft. But at the end of the day, getting these games into Xbox Game Pass for as low as $5 per month when they launch their friends and family this fall is going to dominate the conversation, because what Microsoft has done is lower the cost of allowing people of every station to enjoy gaming. And I think that in itself is a story.
It is.
So when you take a look at Microsoft, who, to be very forthcoming, is very light in their own first party this year. We knew that was going to happen. But they are delivering on their promise to pack Xbox Game Pass with titles of every ilk, of every genre, of every size, and they're delivering in spades. What are your thoughts on what's coming in October for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers?
Well, Boom, this is definitely still a juicy topic because it goes into many directions, and like you mentioned, it definitely has a lot of tentacles on it, which is why I wanted to make sure I put that reference of the Kraken in there, because that's literally what it is. I know a lot of people have been questioning Xbox and their first party output and everything to be considered. I can understand that conversation. Unfortunately for me, I am going to attack it from a different angle as somebody who only looks at games, not dependent on what platform they're on. I just look at games. Now, for me to say that there's only a couple of games on this list, that they're releasing in the Game Pass that I even have remote interest in, right? So one of them is going to be Gunfire Reborn. The other one is going to be A Plague Tale. Now, for A Plague Tale, I haven't even played the first one yet. That's mainly because I'm just not that type of gamer. I'm not a single player gamer. I do enjoy those story driven games that can be a good time, but I'm very picky and choosy about those things. Now Game Pass does open that up for me to jump into. Well, had a chance to jump into the first one a little bit, but then also possibly be able to jump into the second one. It brings to the forefront that even as somebody who does not maybe say, because that's always comes up in conversation, well, there's nothing here for me, all these games are fodder, no, who wants to play Norco, what is that?
I love the fodder commentary that you hear. It's so preposterous. It really is.
Exactly. But that's what gets me amped up when people say those types of things, because they're blatantly outing themselves and letting you know the type of gamers that they are. Me, as the type of gamer that I am, I'm not going to judge anybody's play style, the type of games that come out, when whether something is or is not for me. If we were only talking about what I care about, we would have a very short conversation. I care about what the gaming industry is about, what us as gamers care about, what is going to be the potential. So when you see the variety, because again, that's something I'm going to continuously preach to the choir. I do it on Live a Split Screen. I've done it since I entered the community about almost 2 years ago. But we are literally in the age of accessibility and the age of variety, because of previous competition and that even flow that Xbox and Sony had. Keep in mind, they're the only ones that have had even flows. But because of that, Xbox has done something to potentially skew the market in such a way that people can't deny value. And when you have games like these coming into a service that maybe you were looking at, maybe you didn't care about, like myself, I can still go through my list, download these, pre-install them, try them out for. That's my demo right there. And I get that as part of my service. I'm not, when I look at this, I'm not saying, oh man, my $15 isn't worth it. I'm looking at it like, man, I mean, they're not all for me, but I can see the worth here. I might jump in. Who knows? Dyson Sphere program that's on PC. I have a PC right now. Wow. Maybe I could jump into that. That's coming to PC. Evil. I don't know what that is, but it's going to be available for download. So I could try it out, see if I could jump into it. Now, before you know it, I've spent 200 hours in a game that I didn't even know that I wanted. That's kind of the point here, right? So it's just as always, it's going to be a consistent conversation of what people perceive as value, and we're always going to have to fight back against the evil army or the zombie horde that wants to fight back against us or put that pressure on us and say, hey, well, this isn't good enough. Until we get first party, this isn't good enough. And I'm of the mindset, and I'm the type of gamer to say that I can't agree that this isn't good enough. Obviously, Microsoft understands that their first party is weak. Obviously, they know that they need more time. So when you cut deals to make sure that this is in your service, I think they're moving all the right bricks to build the right foundation. So,
You know, it's funny. One of the things that we heard when it launched in the summer of 2017 is that Game Pass was going to become a never was.
Yep.
Right. That was the running conversation with many.
Yep.
And since 2017, and we are now in 2022, it has seen 5 years. You know, it made its 50th birthday in July of this year. And in that time has equated nearly 30 million subscribers. Now, they have officially said 25, but like I said, I do have a few connections within the industry where I do trust, and King and I use a lot of the same connections because we do know some people, and that's a number that we both heard. Now, whether or not that's true, whether or not that is, close to it or potentially a little bit past it, we don't know. But let me just say this. When you launch a service, nothing is guaranteed. Okay, services launch all the time. Some fail, some you never hear about, and some take your money and run. Perfect example of that is Google Stadia.
Yeah.
Google did what Google does. They launched something, they dipped their toe in, and when it's not immediately making gazillion dollars, they do what they always do, and it ends up in the graveyard of Google. Yeah, and that's exactly where Stadia is. It's probably going to remain there, and it just is what it is. At this point, you know what? When you look at what Xbox has done, right? They offer this plethora of titles from every genre that you could possibly imagine. And what's interesting, you said something that I thought was worthy of talking about. You said this game may not be for me. Boom. There's 3 games, all 8 games may not be for me. Maybe this month is just not for me. But then I think the issue that you run into here isn't whether or not the game is good. It is not because the game is AAA or AA or single A or indie. It's holy shit. What do I have to do? What do I have to delete on my hard drive because now I got no space? Because that's what ends up happening a lot with me. Especially because I have terabyte after terabyte after terabyte. I just keep moving stuff back and forth. I got one of the memory cards. I got the onboard stuff. I got 2 off-board, 8 terabyte, thing, and they're all filled. They're almost all filled because there's just so many games, and Game Pass just continues to add games that listen. The rescue dogs,
Paw Patrol?
Paw Patrol. They have a car racer.
Yeah,
I downloaded it and I got about 200 gamer score. I'm not ashamed to say that I like stuff like that.
Why you shouldn't be ashamed? Yeah, I mean you shouldn't be ashamed. But
when Tyler, who's my nephew, I talk about all the time, comes over, he wants to play this. I sit down, we play together. We have a grand old time.
That's what it's about.
But I have to say that just looking at what they're delivering this month. Scorn is a game that is coming out a week early, and some people are like, that's no big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal because they could have easily just waited, and it's coming out on the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And again, A Plague's Tale. Shout out to Dealer Gaming, who got a code and put it out there that he was just starting it. So obviously, we're going to get a chance to hear him probably next week talk about it, depending on if he's under embargo or not. And
if you like the first one, so
yeah. So I mean, he's one of the first people that I know that are actually playing the game. I checked my email, they didn't send it, but it's cool.
Hey Phil, you gotta hit Boom up in the DMs, man.
It's cool. It's all right. I'm not offended. I got Game Pass, so I'm getting it anyway.
There you go.
But listen, I want to continue the conversation, but I do want to catch up with some of the super chats. Been quite a few of them. We also have a new channel member. First of all, Drawn TJ drops a $5 super chat and says, "When the deal gets done, put Call of Duty in Game Pass day one." Yeah, it's funny. When I start reading some of these excerpts, and then we talked about it last night. Listen. I'm not a petty individual, right? I'm just not, because I don't get offended for silliness. But I have to be honest with you. After the behavior, the unprofessional behavior of Jim Ryan towards Phil Spencer and Xbox, on how he really dug his heels in the sand regarding saying publicly that the deal that was sent in January was not good enough. It was I forgot the exact terminology he used. He said it
wasn't sufficient.
It wasn't sufficient enough for his gamers. And I got slightly annoyed about that, because I said, wait, hold on a sec. You're the market leader. I get it. We got to tip the cap, but you're not making the $70 billion investment. So who the F do you think you are to tell me that the deal I'm offering you, which we know is unusual? They said, hey, listen, your deal ends in 2024. We'll give you another 3 years, giving you up until 2027, which is essentially the end of the generation, potentially, when the start of new consoles. So in 2028, when the next Xbox, whatever is called, they're going to launch with Call of Duty potentially as an exclusive. And you know what? Why not? Because if the shoe was on the other foot, Sony would do it too. So last night we were all talking, and I know there were a lot of people like, Microsoft kind of put it out there. Well, who's to say they can't rescind it?
I mean, that's good.
I mean, if this deal I think the biggest aspect, and we're going to get into it momentarily, because we already got 300 people here. This is only a 90-minute show, so we're going to rip this Band-Aid off and go right into it. But here's the thing, folks. What's interesting is the fact that this deal was passed with 0 restrictions still. And I think that is monster, because there were a lot of people in this community that are suggesting that Microsoft is ready for, an injunction of sorts, like, hey, listen, we'll promise 10 years of Call of Duty just to get this deal done. When you hear what the Brazilian regulators had to say, again, very hard to imagine that the other three big entities in the FTC, the
Mhm.
CMA, and the EU Commission are going to have anything different to say. I just can't see that happening.
But boom, that's just Brazil. They look at things differently.
Yeah,
You
right. The
can't
third
do
world country, sure, sure. I've seen it. Like, who's Brazil? Oh, I don't know. One of the biggest
that.
countries outside of America. I don't know. But listen, we have a new channel member. I want to thank iSalvation5. Thank
Hey,
you, brother. Thank you so much for joining it. We are, folks,
very
we
nice.
are closing in on 125 channel members. That's crazy. Like,
That's
this is still a
nice.
small channel. I,
That's
I
nice.
honestly cannot believe it. So I'm going to say a
So
big thank you. Jordan TJ drops another $2 super chat and says, hey, Boom, hey, Steel, hey, everyone in chat. Indeed. Welcome, brother. We also have Michael G drops a very generous $2 super chat, and he says the Xbox Series S with an extra controller is $250. He actually, somebody sent me something in the. I'm gonna get to it in a second when I hand the mic over to you. But yes, I think next week Target is having a sale, and the
oh,
Series
wow.
S is $250. This is pre Black Friday, folks. I have a strong suspicion that they're going to choke out the competition this year, and they don't even have Call of Duty. Hell, they don't even have a monster AAA first party. But it's going to be very interesting, to say the least. We had a monster super chat come in from Kenta Wilson, who drops an outstanding $10 super chat and says, loving Xbox Game Pass. It is changing the game. Indeed, it is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is changing the game. And I think that is what scares Sony. I think Sony's old guard mentality is why they're in trouble. It's why that they have pivoted,
Mhm.
Steel, to make these 12 gas games, which are going to take
Yeah.
years. Which they're
Yeah.
going to take years to come out
Mhm.
with. Because remember, they just talked about that. These games haven't been development. If they've been in development 12 months, that might be a lot. I think you are years out. The only one that I can see coming is Factions, and that's not even guaranteed next year because we've seen nothing of it. So who's to say? But we
Yeah.
have another super chat of $5 coming from Primus Gaming, who was a channel member recently. Thank you so much for that, brother. He says this acquisition is growing legs and walking
Yeah.
Xbox gamers into the next nirvana. Afternoon, Mr. Boom. Afternoon to you. And yes, that's a great point. Highlander01 drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, hope you're having a great day. Microsoft will force Sony to evolve, indeed, or they will be acquired by a larger company. It's not personal, it's business. That is absolutely correct. Like I said, I have a strong suspicion that they could, in fact, be acquired at some point if they don't, make the correct changes, otherwise become a publisher. They may just be the next Sega. And, again, King David's been saying that for years. Brett Bingham drops a very, very generous $2 super chat and says, hashtag stop snitching and hashtag charge them more.
There you go.
Listen, let's get into what happened yesterday. Now, I pulled a story from one of my favorite places, videogameschronicles.com. It was written by the great Andy Robinson, and the title of the lead story simply says, Brazilian regulators approve Microsoft's proposed Activision Blizzard deal, and Brazil's C.A.D.E approved the acquisition with no restrictions on Wednesday. Now, folks, again, this is a very hefty document. We're not going to get into it. These links will be available in the show notes after the show goes video on demand. So if you want to click on it and you want to read it, you can definitely check it out there. But let's start off with what C.A.D.E had to say. They said this, folks. Considering the huge popularity of Call of Duty, it's reasonable to infer that if Activision Blizzard games were no longer available on Sony's console, PlayStation users could decide to migrate to Xbox or even PC to continue having access to franchise games. And this is a part of their of C.A.D.E summary. They continue, folks. On the other hand, it's also reasonable to assume that if the upcoming Call of Duty games became exclusive to the Microsoft ecosystem, players loyal to the PlayStation brand could simply abandon the series, migrate their demand to other games available on their favorite console, right? Well,
Mhm.
it continues, and this is where it gets a little nasty. Okay, the C.A.D.E verdict goes on to state, Steele, that it believes exclusive content has been very important for competition. Let me see. Where's okay? Very important for competition in the console market, and is one of the main factors responsible for PlayStation and Nintendo's positions as market leaders.
Mhm.
But it gets even more spicy, folks. Exclusive games are the benchmark of competition between Microsoft and SIE, although no company has so far developed or acquired an exclusive game that has divisively shifted the balance in favor of the console. This is because proprietary exclusive games are less popular and represent less revenue than third party AAA games, which until then are available on both Xbox and PlayStation.
Right.
And it says this: as already seen, Steele, Nintendo does not currently rely on any content from Activision Blizzard to compete in the market. In turn, Sony has several predicates: strength of the world's leading brand for more than 20 years, extensive experience in the sector. It has a larger user base, largest install base of all consoles, robust catalog of exclusive games,
Mm.
partnerships, and multiple publishers, brand loyal
Mm.
consumers, etc., which should contribute, Steele, to maintaining the competitiveness of PlayStation in a possible post operation scenario, even in the face of the possibility of loss of access to Activision Blizzard content. That
Mm.
is not
The
that's not a
list.
manifesto from Boom or an Xbot. That is from the government of Brazil. Please, that's the spice. That is where you're going to have to drink some water because you're going to choke yourself out. Chat, check it out. I read it for you verbatim, but now we got to get Steel Rain Steel. I
Yeah.
think that one paragraph is the nail in Jim Ryan's dance moves coffin.
Yeah, man. I mean, it definitely is. It's the nail. It's the whatever. It's the tape. Whatever you need to do. Put Gorilla Glue on it. Whatever the case may be. The one thing that's just so obscene to me, so crazy to me about this entire deal, is the fact that we're talking about mostly is what's talked about is one game. We're not talking about a catalog of games, and we're not even talking about those games being removed because it was already, put out there that Microsoft wasn't even considering removing the content from their ecosystem. Now, whether we talked about this a little bit earlier, now whether they come back later and decide to do things differently, that's a completely different conversation. We'd have to handle that when we get to it. But with a lot of that you spoke with, and a lot of what we've seen from Brazil, and again, you guys talked about a little bit last night that Brazil kind of carries that attitude, like, man, like, what did you hit me up about this for? You know what I mean? It's like when you hit up a homie and you're trying to, go out or something like that, and he's not really into that specific place that you guys are going that night, and you're probably going to get a no from him, but you ask him anyway, and he's just like, dude, I'm not going. It came across kind of like that to me. But it also kind of, I'm not going to say kind of, it also solidifies a lot of the things that we've kind of come on and said, where there's no reason why this deal should be blocked. There's nothing that says that, hey, this is anti-competitive. This isn't outside the realm of how deals have been done in the past. Matter of fact, the only reason why we've got to this deal is because of how things have been up to this point, because of Sony's strong dominance in the gaming market, because of Nintendo's strong dominance in the gaming market, because Microsoft is the little brother within the gaming industry side of things, or whether you want to consider PC some of that, it's still I consider that a little bit different. But as far as the console space goes and everything, Microsoft is the little brother, and for them to come in and say, hey, well, we want to take things seriously, we're going to get ZeniMax and we're going to get Activision Blizzard so that we can buff up our catalog and give our gamers something to be proud of, because that's the thing that people have been complaining about. People the reason, like the part of the reason why Xbox's brand loyalty is kind of faded since the 360 is because nobody has a reason to be proud of owning an Xbox. And that's mainly because of the brand identity. Now, yes, we got strong ones like Halo, Forza, Gears, and such, but none of them have hit as hard as what we've seen from Sony because of what they've kind of created up to this point. So when you hear them go out and cry about these games, that's just business. They're doing that to cause a scene. It's like a child like a young child in a
having a
candy
tantrum.
store. Exactly. Just throwing themselves on the floor. You got to pull them up. I know for me personally, my child starts doing that. I got to yank him up, put him on the shoulder.
Listen, if I did that, I got pow back in the day.
Exactly.
You
got the collector coming, right? So
my mother would never hit the face, but she'd always hit the back of the legs. And she was
course.
a ninja. She never missed.
Exactly. So it's like, it's just it gives you a different, you got to look at it from a different perspective this time around. It's not about, this content's being taken away from me. It's what it's about is Microsoft having the potential to be looked at how they were in the past, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, as far as being looked at as a monopoly, because they are an American-based company, because Microsoft does have all this reach, because they do have all this money. People are worried about what Microsoft could possibly do within the gaming space, although they honestly don't care. Right. They would just prefer that their specific piece of plastic, whatever they hold their brand loyalty to. Again, I see people do this all the time with Jordans, so I can understand how it works in the gaming space. And again, for those who have been in the gaming space since the 90s, you kind of have you have that understanding of how these kind of situations happen. But there is literally nothing in play right now that is either anti-competitive on the Microsoft side of things that is going to vastly change how the market works in any way, shape, or form. People still are saying that Game Pass is bleeding money and don't see how it could be sufficient for an X amount of time. And what I've mentioned to Pong previously, it's like the more information that continues to come out, regardless of we're talking about Call of Duty, a Blizzard, or the Diablo, whatever games that we end up throwing into the conversation, what's funny to me is that these people are blatantly admitting that Game Pass is a threat. That people are, even though they're not saying it up front, because that's one thing people always say, well, we don't know how well it's really doing. Oh, we don't know the real numbers. Oh, Microsoft, how convenient that Microsoft doesn't have to put out the numbers and everything. What's happening is that word of mouth kind of behind the scenes. Hey, you can get into Game Pass and you can still buy games. Hey, you can get into Game Pass and you can still try games that you maybe didn't have interest in. You can get in here like we're going to expect, like somebody in chat mentioned earlier. You would be crazy to think that once this deal goes through, Call of Duty and all the games under Activision Blizzard King are not going directly into Game Pass, because they are. It is a guarantee. And no, those games don't have to be removed. They could be exclusive, but for what? The exclusive is Game Pass. The game is being played differently. Jim Ryan, Sony, any other competitors, Google, they are complaining because Microsoft, for the first time within this industry, is on the pulse of what the gamers are looking for, of where the digital era is moving.
Can I add something to exactly what you're saying?
Yeah.
For the first time in over a decade, Steele, they're no longer on their heels, yet they're on the offensive.
Yeah.
Now Sony is playing defense, and so far, not really playing it too good. It seems like they're playing a prevent defense, where they're simply just there to put a body in front of this thing. But if someone comes that is looking to score, they're going to mow them over. And that's what has happened here, Steele.
Yeah, they're playing man defense. It's like having Shaq in the paint. You're not stopping Shaq.
Yep.
You just not. And now that, Shaq, in this case, I mean, it's hard to compare because Shaq has always been dominant. But in this case, Microsoft woke up and was like, look, man, you want us to take gaming seriously? Okay, why do we need to take it seriously? Oh, we can create a service? Great, Phil. Let's do that. if that's going to be our way forward, so we can push the cloud and our future plans and everything else that we're trying to do as we move forward into the digital era. Because again, I don't know if people forget, but a lot of these business plans and dealings happen years in advance. They have a plan currently that is a no pun intended 10-year plan. Right, I know it's kind of hard because 343 isn't doing the strongest, and they're first party Microsoft studio. So how does Microsoft have a 10-year plan? They can't get Halo's 10-year plan right. But I can guarantee you, in business, you have to look at these things because you have to kind of predict what the flow of the industry is going to be, how technology is going to evolve, and Microsoft is just directly on the top of that. Activision Blizzard doesn't hold up anything. It actually brings in more competition to the industry than we've ever seen before. Again, we've talked about them. You've talked about it multiple times on multiple shows. Boom. Even if when this deal goes through, Microsoft will still not be number one. They will still be number three.
Yep.
The only thing Sony's going to really lose is that 70-30 that they had before, where Microsoft is not going to be giving that 70. But even then, their gamers still have access. More people have access. Matter of fact, Microsoft wants to put Call of Duty on Nintendo platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that seem more consumer facing?
It certainly does. Yeah.
So I think that's the overall point. We're having a conversation now that's kind of moving into, hey, it's not about the business. We're seeing the gamers kind of come down and be like, oh well, I don't know, it's not good for me. It's not good for the goose. It can't be good for the gander.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of how it's going. So.
Well, you know what? I want to add some more spice to already something that people are in the chat are calling the spicy chip challenge. All right. Now this is interesting because this is the shade that I think, and again, we have a couple more paragraphs again, so I'm going to break it down so we can, have our chance to really sit down and digest it. Because again, the first excerpts, there's a lot to digest, so I don't want to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But this right here, Steele, this statement, and I, first of all, I got to thank the over 450 people here.
Let's go.
If you are new, and I see a lot of new faces here, please consider subscribing. My wife and I have built this channel from the ground up. We've done it the right way. We've done it the mom and pop way of doing things, the grassroots, if you will. Just putting out good content, giving back to the community when we can. And just and just leveling the playing field when it comes to being a pair of content creators that put the community first. And if you're digging that, what I'm putting down, I would ask that you consider subscribing and of course hit the bell icon so you know when I go live. I got to thank a couple of people. We got Ham Solo 05, Ham Solo from Ham Solo Gaming. Just a very generous $2 from chat and says Brazil said, "Take that ish somewhere else, bro." And you know what? In so many words, that they actually did that. John Wolf, good friend of the program, just a $2 from chat and says Brazil told Jim his claims were inadequate. Indeed, and that's exactly what he said. He said the deal was inadequate. And I hope Microsoft pulls that deal, but that's just me being petty. Danny Passion Official drops an outstanding $2 super chat and he says he's working in NYC today. What a great news. Let's go. Yeah, well, yeah, it is definitely good news. It's good news in the sense that I think it's the first one of the big dominoes to drop, but I think it's what was worded, how they said things, especially the next excerpt that I'm going to read to you folks is, I think, a shot across the bow to the CMA. Because remember, I had a lot of problems, Steele, with the block emoji from the CMA on Twitter, getting out there and saying that we're concerned for Sony's position as market leader, which I actually can't believe that was put out there. Like, that was actually in their stage 1 documentation that they said that. And to me, that sounds like collusion, right? You can suggest that might be collusion. You can certainly suggest that there might be some corruption when you're supposed to be there about competition, but more so about the people, meaning us, the consumers, not Sony, the billion-dollar corporation. It's very suspect. But I want to continue with the super chats, and I'm going to read this damning paragraph It is. Oh, first of all, shout out to Hargeet Channy in the chat. I'm going to get to everybody, but Hargeet killed it last night. He jumped on at the last minute with King David and Randall Thor. And folks, I can't say that this happens a lot, but that episode last night is closing in on 1,000 likes. Like, that's crazy. It's the most viewed show, I think, this year. We're closing in on 10,000 views, which is freaking bonkers.
Hey.
And it's 1,000 likes. So if you missed it last night, we had King David, we had Hargeet Chani, we had Randall Thor, who, by the way, was Dark Emperor Randall Thor 19, because he is bathing in the sustenance that is Jim Ryan. He says, give me more. I hope it lasts 6 months. Shout out to him for being there for the whole show. But we also had Drawn TJ drop an additional $5 super chat and says Microsoft needs to hire the best port studio and put World of Warcraft in Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, remake it for console. I don't see that that's not going to happen, to be honest with you. I mean, again, there are people that play WoW with a controller, so I don't see why that actually could not happen. And I think we might be up to date. So we're up to date on the super chats. I will again continue to welcome everybody in here. We have just crossed 450 people. Oh, Hargeet drops a super chat of $5. Says one of the inadequacies I'm sure will come up with Call of Duty deal is the cross-play tax. Microsoft may be pushing to eliminate it. I'm sure they absolutely are, and they absolutely should. Sony has lost the leverage. They are no longer on the high ground. Right. And remember what happened to Anakin Skywalker when he was fighting Obi-Wan? He didn't have the high ground and he lost his legs. And I think Sony has lost theirs. But listen, let me read this very, very tasty and spicy shot across the bow to the CMA. And this is coming from the Brazilian regulators known as C.A.D.E. They say this, folks. Furthermore, it is important to highlight that the central objective of C.A.D.E.'s activities is the protection of competition as it means of promoting the well-being of Brazilian consumers. And get this, folks, not the defense of a particular interest of specific competitors. After all, one cannot lose sight of the fact that the holder of the legal assets protected by law number 12,529/2011 is the collectivity and not the competitor economic agent as an individual entity. Shots fired. By all means, take it away. Again, because I've read all the documents from everyone, to me, Steele, this is a direct shot across the bow to the CMA, who said in their documents, we're concerned for Sony's number one position within the marketplace. That is collusion, that is corruption, and that is a big problem.
No, and that's a huge issue, and it's definitely a little shot to the side a little bit. So kind of one of those Max Payne moments. You're shooting this way, you're also shooting that way, slowing down time. For me, they're 100% correct, man. I mean, I thought that was the point of this was, right? That they're just going through, making sure there's nothing too out of play, nothing real scary going on. And again, nobody knows what the future has in tow. So you can't use that angle either, because I have seen that go around quite a bit, to where, oh, well, they're trying to take the consideration of the future in mind, right? That's what they're looking at. Well, they got to be a little bit more future facing, because Microsoft could monopolize cloud, and now that's what they're looking at. And now the FTC has come out, and it's mentioned some of those things, and they do want to look at some of those markets and do want to get more information from Microsoft and Xbox about those things and how that's approached. But they have competition in those spaces. Just because nobody else has come in and tried, again, we could look at Google Stadia coming in and trying and inevitably failing, because I guess they didn't expect the investment was going to have to be as big. But for things like this, it's not up to these regulators to make sure that your favorite company, or Sony in this happenstance, is going to be the number one, is going to be the de facto. If it's not Sony, everybody else is out the door. It's like saying that it's like the saying that Apple has to be the defender. That has to be it. If you don't have an Apple phone, you're irrelevant. And I know some people may feel that way, the same way they do it with Sony, but that's just not the case. There has to be competition. Call of Duty, Activision, Blizzard, all the games in there do not limit competition in any way, shape, or form. If anything, it only gives Microsoft more of what they were looking for already in live service games, multiplayer games, other games that they needed to fulfill their library to give the people that variety that we keep speaking to. So when you see these comments be made about, Sony's spot and, the money and, we don't know if they'll be able to, still succeed without this game because nothing's comparable. And then you hear Jim Ryan come out and say, oh, well, we don't currently have any studio that can make something comparable to a Call of Duty. Well, Jim and anybody else that's on board, that's not anybody else's problem but yours. You chose the route that you were going. You have made this very similar games, and Xbox has done some of the same as far as the Western RPGs go, but you have decided to do the third person over the shoulder action adventure games you're known for and that are great and that people love, and these movie style games because you're Sony and everything has to be so performative and perfect. And as we saw with Horizon Forbidden West, it's not necessarily the case. So some of that is faltering somewhere, but neither here or there, and we'll leave that for a different conversation. There's just so many things that are at least letting me know that PlayStation's behind the ball. They're having to look at things differently. Again, we mentioned the 12 live service things that they're making. I don't know if The Last of Us Factions is going to come out next year.
I agree.
At this point, I don't think it's going to come out until they remaster Last of Us 2.
Which is something that is not out of the, considering what they've been doing the last couple of, at least for the last year into this year, it has been the remaster station. And I'm not being like facetious, folks. Just look at, they've remastered everything. It's only a matter of time before The Last of Us 2 gets a remaster.
Horizon Zero Dawn already?
Yes, ridiculous.
That's the definition of insanity. But in some ways it may very well work for them because they are tied into the film side of things, the movie, the TV side of things, the movie side of things. And if Last of Us really blows up that show and people jump into that first game again with this remaster, or this remake, I should say, then they're going to want to do the same thing with the second game to continue to push those numbers. But then it's like, what else do you guys have then? So you got Spider-Man, you got Spider-Man 2, you got Wolverine, what else you got? You got other third-party games you got to cut deals for. There's so many things that are getting thrown into question, and if I feel like Sony doesn't jump onto I don't want to necessarily say it's a bandwagon because it's not a bandwagon. I just feel like it's a necessity for you to get a live service game that can work very well within your ecosystem, regardless of how you feel about Halo or not. Halo can drive numbers to Xbox, to the ecosystem regardless, because it's Halo. Gears can do the same thing. It may not be big to everybody, but it's in the Xbox ecosystem. It can drive those numbers that they may be looking for as far as I would say there's an enthusiast standpoint. But I think that if they don't start moving quicker into the service side of things, putting games on PC day and date quicker, that should be more so the bigger worry that they have versus whether they're going to have a Call of Duty or Candy Crush or any other game that they may be worried about within the Activision Activision Blizzard umbrella. So
yeah, listen, we're expecting one more special guest that's going to pop in here for a hot minute. He actually One Bad Mother from Xbox Era should be joining us momentarily. I do want to read shout out to Everborn Saga who put this into our DMs, folks. Exactly. if you want to hear what the Brazilian government has already added to this ridiculously spicy excerpts that we've read, this one, to me anyway, I think is the driving point to any of Jim Ryan's complaints. And I'll read it here. I don't know if OBM is listening, but I want to get his opinion when he gets in here, but I want to get yours first. And this again, this is excerpt 340 in the document. And it says this, Steele: investment in exclusive content is and has always been very important to competitive dynamics in the console segment.
Yes.
Exclusive content was most likely one of the main factors responsible for positioning PlayStation as the leader of the world console market for more than 2 decades. A leadership that lasts to this day. Nintendo adopts a commercial strategy strongly based on its own brands and games exclusive to its consoles, as well as its licensing of these brands for the production of other consumer and entertainment products. Microsoft, which currently seems to be selling fewer consoles than the 2 competitors worldwide, as suggested in the estimates contained in table 29 and chart number 5 above, has invested heavily in acquisitions of development studios and game publishers to strengthen the context of Xbox and Game Pass in order to make its products and services more attractive to consumers. Really hard to argue that point. And like I said earlier, and I will continue to say this, I find it very, very suspect if the CMA, the EU Commission, and the FTC have anything different to say regarding exactly what we have read so far. What are your thoughts on them focusing on PlayStation being the market leader for 2 decades?
I mean, that blatantly lets you know that there is a dire need of more competition to be present within the industry. Again, they're like, it's like Nintendo and PlayStation are like rubbing Microsoft's nose in the face of it all, saying, hey, nah, you'll never be here. You'll never be part of this club. You'll never be the most wanted. You'll never be. It's like you're back in high school again, and you're playing this popularity game with kids, and it's like, so Microsoft is, or Xbox in this case, is never going to be allowed to be a true presence within gaming. Like, I don't.
It almost seems as if they want to keep the boot on, and how dare you want to get from under the boot?
But see, but when you see, and then the thing is, when you start taking that perspective of it, though, and start looking at it that way, like a lot of us are, then you start coming to understand what the bigger picture is for the industry and who the people that actually care about what's going on with gaming versus people who just are trying to defend their personal purchase. Which I'm do your thing, man. You know, if I bought a Lamborghini, you bought a Ferrari, of course I'm gonna defend my Lamborghini purchase. But I'm also a fan of Lamborghinis, not really a fan of Ferraris. If you just want to kind of use that as a simple reference. Everybody's gonna have their thing. A lot of this is more so conversational pieces than anything at this point, and anybody kind of trying to fight back against it, again, you're blatantly just letting us know that you don't want competition in this space. You want what you want, and that's not what this is. These companies are in business to get your dollar. The people above them who are looking over these deals and looking at Microsoft spend more than they ever have in their company's history, because again, that's another huge part of this puzzle that people are missing, that you can't just spend almost $100 billion in an industry that you weren't that heavily invested to. I mean, of course they were invested, but not as much as they blatantly have made it seem since 2017. And then spend almost $100 billion and expect nobody to blink an eye. Yeah, people, you want those things to get looked at. No, this isn't about monopolizing the industry. Actually, they're giving more access to people than ever before. So it's so weird how the conversations kind of go back and forth when the bottom line, or the weakest string, I should say, of the most of the conversation is just that, we just don't want Microsoft or Xbox competing that way. We want them to do it the same way Sony has been doing it, the same way Sony's been putting the boot on the neck of a lot of their competitors, especially Microsoft, who they've blatantly admitted they were trying to destroy in the Xbox One generation, PlayStation 4 generation. And now that Microsoft has woken up and said, hey, gaming is a pillar. Oh, it's a problem. Oh, I want Microsoft to compete. But now that they spend money, it's a problem. They can't do it that way. Oh, the $1 trillion, the $2 trillion company, it's not okay for them to spend money to be more of a presence in an ecosystem, as you just mentioned, Boom, in an industry where they're not even close. This generation right now, the series,
not even
Xbox
remotely
series,
close, dude. Yeah,
the Xbox Series, PlayStation 5 generation, it's probably been the closest it's been in a while, and it's still PlayStation is still leaps and bounds, millions. I'm talking about over 3 million consoles over the competition.
Well, the last numbers that we have, the last quote unquote official numbers, folks, that we had that come in, I don't know, maybe 30 days ago, maybe even a little bit more, maybe it's closer to the 45-day mark, was PlayStation 22K, 22 million versus Xbox 16 million. So, I mean, it's close. Let's call a spade, but it's still 6 million units.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, both systems, the other thing too, both systems, of course, have sold better than their previous years. But it's just like, man, well, what is the true conversation? What is the true point of all this complaining, crying, this perspective that a lot of people have, where we just can't, for whatever reason, we just can't compete this way?
Yeah. No, I absolutely got you again, knocked it out of the park. There's two things that I want to mention. First of all, one bad mother from Xbox era, once again on loan. Please let John and the crew know that the 50-cent check won't bounce this time. I promise.
I'll throw another 50 on there, so there'll be $1 coming through.
I appreciate that, sir. We can every penny counts.
What's up, guys?
And I got to give a shout out to Calorie in the chat.
Yes.
They are not only always here, which I incredibly appreciate, but everyone, I want everyone to know, and shout out to Web Dave, who's in the chat. Right now, until Saturday, at your local Target, they have an abundance of Xbox Series S consoles. They come with an extra controller, and they're $250. So if you are a PlayStation guy or a gal, or someone that's looking to do Christmas shopping or Kwanzaa shopping or any of your holidays early, right now it's $250 with an extra controller. That's a monster deal. And mind you, that is on the heels of Black Friday, which comes in about a month. But even more so, they're going to launch the friends and family plan probably around Black Friday. So get ahead of this now and get over there and get that console. $250 for that console it was a steal at $300.
Yeah,
$250 is ridiculous, and another $70 controller on top of that. Bro. You really can't go wrong. But one bad mother. Listen, I know you're just in here now. I know that you and I have been talking in the DMs. The big hubbub from last night was the fact that the Brazilian government, their competition board, known as C.A.D.E, approved the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which is close to $70 billion. And I think the most important aspect of it is that there are no restrictions. I think that is a big deal. We've been talking about it all morning or early afternoon about what they said. Now, one of the things that I just that I read that I thought was very significant to the conversation is something that a good friend of the program, and obviously someone that's a part of Primetime Gaming, Everborn Saga, dropped into the chat. Now he put this out here, and he says, "Boy, oh boy, this document is a veritable treasure trove of information." Now there is a second excerpt that I want to read to you specifically, and then I want to get your overall opinion on this. This comes at document number paragraph 338 and 339 of the C.A.D.E decision to approve this transaction. And it says this, folks. This SG/C.A.D.E believes But the fact that Call of Duty is traditionally a series of cross platform games has a significant influence on a number of users and sales performance of the franchise. After all, it's logical to inference that the greater the number of hardware platforms on which a particular game is playable, the greater the base of potential users and buyers of such game. Given this context, it is likely that at least in the short term, Call of Duty will lose a significant volume of revenues and players if their games were no longer offered to users of the most popular console in the world, which of course is PlayStation. In fact, such a hypothetical scenario could not only negatively impact the numbers of the franchise, but also favor other multi platform games similar to Call of
Mhm.
Duty that remain on PlayStation, such as competing series like Battlefield from EA or Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six from Ubisoft. And here is the continuation, which is document number 339, says this. Despite this, it cannot be ruled out that Microsoft will consider the adoption of the exclusivity strategy of Activision Blizzard games potentially profitable, even if a decision in this regard could result in sacrifice of a relevant part of sales, users, and even Call of Duty's popularity. This is because, in theory, such a strategy could contribute to boost Xbox sales, expand Xbox Game Pass subscriber base, and strengthen the network effect in the Microsoft ecosystem in order to compensate for any loss of revenue from the sales of games in the short term. And I think really what they're saying is that Microsoft is risking it all to potentially make this exclusive, but they have already said that they intend to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. It's just not going to be in perpetuity, which is what Jim Ryan wants. And I say,
Mm.
F you, because you're not making the $70 billion investment.
Yep.
How dare you go out there and suggest that because you're current market leader, that you're going to dictate how this company who's spending the money puts out their wares. What are your thoughts on this and what happened, OBM?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to digest there. That's actually the little excerpt you had there was actually one of the ones that caught my eye yesterday because EA has actually spoken about this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember which executive over there spoke about it, but basically said that, hey, we hope we hope you make Call of Duty exclusive. It's going to give us an opportunity to become bigger than we have ever been with Battlefield, and it really would create. If Microsoft took Call of Duty off the PlayStation, it would create a vacuum, especially this generation where we still expect, Sony to sell a ton of consoles. They'll probably still, get all the, even in their worst generation, they sold 80, 90 million. So, and this is not going to be their worst generation. So, there's no reason to think that they're not going to hit 100 million consoles at least. So one of my thoughts early on in this process was whether or not this would be exclusive for this generation. It wasn't. I think Microsoft wants to continue to have that leverage, but I don't think it is something where keeping it on there is like some deal breaker for them, because at the end of the day, this is really a purchase they're making for that next paradigm shift in gaming where your games are going to be everywhere. And I don't think they want to risk. It's not just about the sales. I think the sales matter, but I don't think they want to risk the brand. I don't think they want to create a vacuum where now the SOCOM, reboot that's been rumored takes its place, where Battlefield is suddenly the next Call of Duty, right? Because there is something when you are a multi-platform game, and this is the advantage Call of Duty had over Halo back in the day. You just get this sort of, the tide just gets so high when you're everywhere, right? When you're on the PC, every console, and it is something that it's hard to compete with for any exclusive, which is why Sony's going to start releasing theirs day and date on the PC, which is very smart. So I expect that they're going to still want to keep it on there this entire generation. Moving past that, though, nobody knows, and that's where the perpetuity thing doesn't make sense for Microsoft. We don't know we don't even know what Sony's next console is going to be. Is it going to come out at the same time as the next Xbox? We everybody assumes, because of what's happened the last few generations, that they're going to release within a few months of each other. They're going to have similar specs, but we saw, at one point in time, we saw Nintendo do a hard pivot, right? And there's nothing that's stopping Sony from basically going, you know what, let's not go head to head. Let's find a different niche. And maybe even, maybe we're going to do something that's semi-portable, or, maybe it's not going to be, we're not going to just try to compete in terms of being the most powerful, and I'm not saying they're not going to, but we don't know, right? And that's one of the reasons why the perpetuity thing never made any sense. And I do think Microsoft also wants this leverage, because as long as you're having to renew this in increments of 3-4 years, they can put pressure on Sony to say, hey, we're not going to pay any cross-play tax.
That should be the first thing right off the bat. If you if you want this on your system, we're not paying you anything.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so to answer your question, what really stuck out to me, though, like kind of reading all these little excerpts yesterday, was I guess I was taken back and surprised, not because I expected Microsoft to have to give up concessions. I was expecting there to, maybe because of the way Jim's been posturing lately, and I'm sure his investors are pushing him to do that, that there was something more that maybe we weren't seeing on the surface, that it wasn't just it's not just that, hey, Call of Duty needs to be on this platform because there's no replacement for it. Because really, if that was your only case, it's a really difficult sell for Sony. And again, the C.A.D.E kind of called out all the real obvious things that almost anybody that has even a surface level understanding of the industry could have called out. The fact that, PlayStation didn't have Call of Duty driving them for the PlayStation 1 or the 2, right, when they dominated the industry, or when they took over out of nowhere with the PS, the first PlayStation. And, the fact that Nintendo is doing what they're doing, and that C.A.D.E, points to that. Like, it's not like this imperative thing for them, so why does it need to be for you? And they also went back and pointed to, like, even if no matter what, they still believe that even other companies can enter this industry. It's not just up to Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. And they kind of allude to that stuff. So really, all the stuff kind of that I pointed out, but I was like wondering. I was like, well, is there something else? Was there something else in Sony's back pocket? Did they think they had, like, was there maybe some implied agreement? Were they going to go, to these governments and say, hey, we had this strategy for this next 10 years based on this implied understanding that even though we're renewing these contracts 3 to 4 years, we were still expecting it to be here. They didn't. There's none of that in there. So, and I think that's a Hail Mary. But it's still a hard sell.
Absolutely.
But I thought there'd be some surprise. There really wasn't. It really was, hey, Call of Duty is just a massive thing. You can't take it away from us. And right now, Microsoft doesn't appear that they're going to this generation. But moving forward, there's really it's a real hard sell to say. And they pointed out every single angle you look at it. Sony themselves have proved that you can succeed without it, and so has Nintendo, and so has Valve, and it just, there just doesn't seem to be any angle. So I'm just wondering, as I read this, I realize C.A.D.E's not the final boss. CMA in the US are still, FTC are still going to be the ones that are probably the big dogs that are.
Well, I mean, they're certainly the three bigs. There's no doubting it. And folks, if you want to have an idea of what is happening, according to the published report this Tuesday, which was a couple of days ago, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, short for the FTC, could reportedly rule on the Microsoft proposed acquisition in late November. So before Thanksgiving, they're expected. Remember, they don't pass these deals. They just say we don't have a problem with it, and Microsoft goes and does it. Meanwhile, the UK competition regulators have announced on Tuesday as well that they have set a provisional deadline of March 1st, 2023 to publish their findings of the inquiry regarding this deal. That is their second look. So is it likely that they're going to do it before? Potentially, maybe a couple of weeks, but usually they're steadfast, and you can expect that this deal would probably get done in the first quarter of 2023.
Right. Yeah. No, and I'm not disagreeing with that. Like, I think the thing I'm looking at though is that even though this is not the end of it, right? The arguments are going to be the same across the board. That's the thing. That's the big thing about looking at the Brazilian case is that the push that Sony's going to make, the arguments they're going to make are probably going to be very similar in every jurisdiction. So I was looking for something and I'm like, I don't see anything here. Like everything was very surface level. It's the stuff that we've talked about before. And I just thought there might be a bigger surprise, maybe a bigger push on the subscription front. But even the C.A.D.E kind of answered that the way I made the case before, where they mentioned that even if Microsoft runs away with this subscription thing today, there's nothing stopping Nintendo and Sony. They got this back catalog of big IPs and relationships with third-party developers. Nothing is stopping them from going ahead and actually trying to compete if they want to compete as a subscription. So basically what the C.A.D.E was saying is like, these things you're saying are problems. If that's a problem, you can go compete. Just like they're basically echoing Satya Nadella and just basically there's nothing stopping you here. There's nothing stopping somebody else here from competing here.
Well, I mean, a perfect example of what you're talking about, folks. Listen, what has taken over the market by storm? That is Splatoon 3. It is the best selling in the series. It is a shooter. It's essentially a shooter for Nintendo. It's Nintendo's answer to Call of Duty, and it is kicking ass and taking names. If Sony wanted to invest their money like they're going to, that's the problem with Sony. They have been so stagnant and sitting at the head of the table or in their throne for so long that their legs are weak. They're not the same Sony of the PlayStation 4 ilk, where they used to spend money, hundreds and millions of dollars, to get that first party marketplace being number one. People have been calling for a SOCOM for a decade, and they haven't had a good SOCOM since the PlayStation 2 era. So, I mean, whose fault is that? Is that Microsoft's fault, or is that Sony for no longer innovating because they've been the market leader for 2 decades long, that they don't feel that they have to compete? Well, now they do. And like I said, if you read this report, and I have read it extensively since last night and this morning, and I've read all the excerpts live on the air. No, I don't think anyone is going to care that they're going to have to do better. I think at the end of the day, you are a $1 billion company. You are not an indie developer. You are a $1 billion corporation. Spend the damn money.
Well, here, I'll read this. Let me read this section here because it kind of alludes to just what we're saying here. So so the C.A.D.E says, despite this, the fact that Microsoft entered the multi-game subscription segment before its competitors in the console market does not translate into a permanent competitive advantage for Game Pass. Both Sony and Nintendo have a vast catalog of exclusive games in their ecosystems, partnerships, and several third-party publishers, and a broad base of captive consumers among their console users. In this sense, it is understood that there is still plenty of room for these companies' subscription services to develop in scope and content in the coming years in order to become increasingly competitive. So what they were saying, like if you kind of like just pick up all, and I won't like read everything, but if you pick up all the pieces, what they're saying is like these things where you're saying where where the case could be made, hey, so Microsoft's cornering this market, they're basically becoming this juggernaut in this space before anybody else has really even just started to play. What they're saying, and we've seen this with TV subscriptions, is you guys can come in when you decide you're going to invest in this and do this, you can do that. And to your point, Boom, this is why competition is good. And this is why, market disruption is good. Because, I do think that what happens with anybody that's in the lead too long, and it's not just in gaming or Sony, it is like any industry, the leader too long that doesn't really feel any threat just gets get. I mean, at that point, it becomes a mature market. It's up to the investors just to maximize it. They're not going to take big risks. There's no reason for them to. Now, Sony's going to have to take some risks, and that might be like figuring out where their lane is in subscriptions, or maybe it is doing something else aggressive, in which which we can't even see. Maybe right. Maybe they got something else that they're going to have to reinvent themselves, and I think they will if they want to continue to be among the the very top market leaders as it moves further. As consoles become a smaller piece of the pie, I think they're going to have to, which is a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody to have this market kind of really throw everybody on edge. Things aren't the same, just because you've been a big publisher, whether you're a publisher or a big platform, you can't rely on that going and be around 10 years from now.
Innovation is the key to business. That is an absolute fact. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I want to catch up with some of the super chats, and we'll get everyone's final thoughts on this, and we will get everyone out of here. We have over 550 people here, which is awesome. Again, this is a relatively new show. We've only been doing it for, I don't know, things like maybe the 20th or 25th episode of X Vlog Live. Apparently, you folks like it. So if you do like it, please consider subscribing. If you're not subscribed, hit the like button before you get on out of here. But I got to thank a few people in the super chats. We have Highlander01, and actually Steel Rain put this in. Pete Hines has been promoted to the head of global publishing at Bethesda. Definitely a great day for Microsoft and Xbox after dropping an additional $5 super chat. So thank you so much for that. We have another super chat that came in from, I believe it's, okay, hold on a second. Just lost it. I think it's Hargeet Chani drops a $10 super chat. Let me find it, Hargeet. This chat is flowing. Let me just see. Okay, yeah. Hargeet Chani, $10 super chat says, was hoping Xbox could get the Series S down to 200 this holiday. Target deal is close since it comes with a controller. Hope they flood the global market with the Series S and a few more of Xbox Game Pass friendly family. If well, I have a feeling, Hargeet, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think this is the precursor, if you will, to what I expect Microsoft to do. I think that maybe during Black Friday for that week, that block, maybe that just the weekend, they drop it to 200. They launch friends and family in there, and they give, instead of a controller, they give the people maybe a 90-day subscription of Xbox Game Pass as a bonus for buying it. And what it does is it locks people into this 90-day subscription, which they're not going to want to get away from, because, well, at that point, there's so many games for them to play. Remember, it's the ultimate pack-in. And I've said this before, Game Pass, even if a game is multi-plat, is the true exclusive. There's no doubt about that. I think that you're going to see them, even if they take a bit of a hit, they're going to drop it down to 200 simply because, well, why wouldn't you during Black Friday and pull a Sony? Sony did that, right? They had a special edition Spider-Man PlayStation Slim. They packed Spider-Man in there, and it was $200, and it broke records that still to this day have not been broken. So why shouldn't Microsoft get in on that? And I think that they should and definitely could. But listen, Steele, let's get your final points on this. After everything that has been read, everything that we have said in the last 70 or 75 minutes, what are your ultimate takeaways from Brazil's C.A.D.E passing this deal with no restrictions?
The only thing I can kind of leave it off on is the wise words of Satya Nadella is, then let us have competition.
Yep.
And at this point, that's exactly what it is. Even if they remove Call of Duty from every platform outside of an Xbox ecosystem, it still wouldn't be an issue for competition. Point blank, period. As we have stated several times over the last couple of years, at least that I've been listening to you, Boom. Xbox is number 3.
Yep.
Them getting this deal, again, $100 billion, and you're still not number 1. Man, what does that speak to? Again, you can't beat years of brand recognition. You can't beat years of fan loyalty. You can't beat, I guess, trying to think of the word for it. You can't beat good games, right?
Yep.
And that's something that Xbox has kind of been fighting themselves against. They needed more studios. They've got that. They've openly have stated that that's their goal for the future. They're not going to stop here. So if we're talking about monopolies and whatever the conversation may go, it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen 2-3 deals from now. So
yeah. No, good stuff as always. And One Bad Mother. What's your final thoughts on the announcement yesterday that literally broke the internet? And this comes on the heels of Saudi Arabia passing this with no restrictions in August, on August 23rd. You're gonna, in the next coming weeks, folks, stay tuned to Double Barrel Gaming, because we're gonna have you covered. Because this is not the last that we're gonna hear in the coming weeks. Until this deal is officially signed. And there's going to be a lot of coverage, and we're going to get you covered here. But what are your final thoughts on this? Good news for Xbox, bad news for PlayStation.
Well, I'm in a similar place that I was a couple weeks ago when Jim got out in front of the crowd, and I was wondering, it's like, well, what else do you got up your sleeve here? Because I don't see, how the case you're making in public is going to have any weight. And I'm assuming you have something else to argue, when you get to this level. And that doesn't look like that's happening. And, and so one of my big takeaways from yesterday, I guess, which I really didn't get to earlier because I chase squirrels like I always do, is that, Jim's that one of the powers of Sony over the years has been the gravitas they have, the brand recognition they have, and C.A.D.E called that out. C.A.D.E said, hey, we expect no matter what, if you could lose all these games and you're still going to get people because of your brand your brand loyalty, and but the thing is, when he came out a couple weeks ago, I said, like, people say, well, he's just doing his job, and I'm like, if this has a very, very low chance of actually resulting in anything,
right,
then I don't think it's a good job, because you've now scared your investors, you scared your customers, you scared your developers.
Good point.
Sony's always walked into the room like they had the biggest controllers.
I like how you did that.
I like that. I like that.
13. That's good stuff. I love it.
And I do think that is part of their brand, and they hold it over third parties. They, people come to work for them because of that. And so I think they need to get back to that aspect and stop, and I do feel that there's been some damage done in the last couple weeks, at least amongst the enthusiasts, because you're seeing it now with the media. They're suddenly like, who weren't writing any articles, and all of a sudden the last 2 weeks are like, oh, maybe we should be concerned. This could be, maybe Sony isn't in trouble and we need to stop this. And it's like, none of that helps you it strengthens you from, getting that confidence that you're going to need to go out and start to do aggressive things to compete. So that was one of my takeaways. I think at the end of the day, this deal, looking at everything and how it was laid out and the case they're making, I would be shocked. I guess you can never be too shocked with in this world, but I would be very, very surprised if we get something much different from the CMA or the FTC in terms of some pushback, other than maybe potential political grandstanding. But even then, if it goes to the courts, I don't see where the end game is here. So I expect Call of Duty is going to be on Game Pass in the next couple of years, and I think that is going to shake up the industry. And it's not just going to shake it up for Sony; it's going to shake it up for everybody. But again, I still hope there's going to be intense competition. It just means people are going to have to change to do it.
I absolutely agree. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be your new episode of X Vlog Live. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. Let me get these 2 super chats that popped in, and we will get to the outros. Starting with Steel Rain. Drawn TJ drops a very generous $5 and $2 super chat. In the first one, he says, I say Black Friday bundle series S and X for $700.
Oh,
that'd be something. And bundle them together. It drops an additional $2 super chat. But Steel Rain, sell your brand, brother. Tell everyone where they can check out your YouTube channel called Living Split Screen, who your co-host is with the co-most, and more importantly, where can people reach out to you on social media?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, luckily enough, I do make it easy for everybody. I still reign. The T is a 7, still reign. You can find me everywhere, man. If it has a search bar, typically I just send people straight to Google. I've tried it out. I had my wife try it out. I've had buddies try it out. It takes you right there. All my content, you'll see me on my own personal channel on YouTube. Not doing too much, but I do host a excellent show with my brother from another Pong Soul, the X-Men who is not Cyclops. And it's Living Split Screen. We're a non-console centric platform. We talk about everything that's going on within the gaming industry. As I like to say, we take that RTS approach, real-time strategy, pulling ourselves out of the world, looking at the darker crevices of the map of the industry in this case, pulling the resources together and building up our own ecosystem, building up our industry and trying to reach those 3 billion gamers, technically the 2.5 other billion gamers that we haven't been able to reach just yet that Phil says he's trying to reach. So, but with that being said, Boom, I want to thank you again for having me on. It's always a pleasure chopping up with you guys. Chat, y'all have been on fire today, just going back and forth. The conversation is amazing. It's always good to see real people in the chat, seeing that chat consistently move, and at least lets Boom know that he is making a huge presence. And I do want Boom to know, not only is Xbox a pillar to Microsoft, but Boom, you are a pillar to our gaming community itself. Appreciate everything that you do. Your show's 5 days out of the week. I don't miss one.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the very kind words, my brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's all honesty. I wouldn't be here if I felt any different. And ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a fantastic rest of your day and stay safe. Much love.
Thank you, brother. And One Bad Mother, sell your brand, brother. Talk about You Had Me at Halo, which there's been a lot to talk about because, well, Halo Infinite changing to Unreal Engine 5. Yes, and I'll take it, even though it's going to put some delays. But you know what? It's fine. I think it should have been EU5 from jump, but at least we know that is coming. Also, talk about Xbox era. You guys are great over there, John, Nick, and yourself, and many of the others that make that site tick. You guys are really doing well on YouTube. You guys are doing great on your website. Talk about it. And where can people reach out to you on social media?
Yeah, well, thank you, Boom. I appreciate the invite. I'm glad I was able to make it here for my lunch break. I'll have to run back to work here in just a moment, but got in just in time to talk about the good stuff. But again, always appreciate the invites. It's always fun to talk with you guys. If you want to catch up with me, know when Boom's gonna send the 50 cents and get me over again. Look for me and Twitter at the handle is mutha_1 MUTHA_ONE. And also we will be having a You Had Me at Halo podcast tonight. So we definitely got a lot to talk about, a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of stuff going on, being said out there regarding Halo UE, the future of it. And so we got a lot to talk about. So if you are a Halo fan, show up for You Had Me at Halo around 7:15 Eastern today. Otherwise, come check out our forums if you haven't. xboxera.com. We have some forums, people talking about this Activision thing in there, talking about the Halo UE thing in there. So come over there and chat with us. Other than that, man, I look forward. I'm sure I'll be on again real soon.
Absolutely. But ladies and gentlemen, that is your new episode of X-Vlog Live. Once again, I am Mr. BoomStick XL. This is Double Barrel Gaming, your number one source for all of your gaming news, reviews, and highly contested opinions. And of course, I thank the super chats that came in. They obviously keep the show running with new equipment. So a big shout out to that. And of course, I want to say something that I always say before I close out every show. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated, so it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week on the newest episode of X-Vlog Live.